All right, everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Paperboy Ventures. This is a historic moment, and I am thrilled to welcome the Sauz founders to the first one here. So, welcome Troy, welcome Winston. Love for you to just say hello.
Hey Kyle, thanks for having us. I'm Troy Bondi. I'm co-founder and CEO of Sauz.
Yeah, hey Kyle, thank you so much. This is a historic moment, I think, in 2024 for us. But yeah, I'm the co-founder and COO of Saws.
Excellent. Thanks for joining, guys. And for the chat today, really we'll just focus on love to hear your story on how this all came together. Second piece, we'll go through what's going on currently, current traction, what you're working on. Then would love to close with where you're looking to take the business and what the ultimate vision is.
Mhm.
So that said, let's get started with the story. Would really love to hear how this all came together.
Yeah, of course. Winston and I went to college together, went to USC together, and it's funny when COVID hit, we were thinking about ways to one, take up time, and two, make some money, honestly. And we ended up sourcing a hand sanitizer dispenser with a built-in infrared thermometer from China. It was really at the time a passion project that just totally took off. Like school districts throughout California were crazy about product. There was a clear need for it. And we had this office, we'd sleep in the office, we'd cook in it, and we'd cook pasta all the time. So we'd go to Whole Foods, we'd be buying pasta and pasta sauce, and we'd walk by like the beverage aisle, and every beverage is bright and colorful and trendy and unique. I think as two kind of blank slate consumers, we were inevitably drawn to like the poppies and the Ollipops of the world. Um, and we'd get to pasta sauce, and it was like it was the opposite. Everything was old Italian, tan label, cursive writing. Nothing visually appealing, and so by virtue of that, we defer to flavor, and everything was a basic marinara, everything was a basic arrabbiata, a basic pomodoro.
And I
Uh,
think, not even just the poppies and those beverages that elicit that like emotional, you know, support to the consumer. I would say like we would walk down even like granola and cereal and like every aisle of grocery, and we felt like, everything was so fun and exciting to look at, and there was nothing new in the category of pasta sauce, and we're like, why is that? We started to like venture into like, doing research on the pasta sauce aisle, and like it's really like dominated by like archaic conglomerate, old Italian pasta sauce companies where like we started to do some research, started getting into MFG's co-packer and all that stuff, and we were like, yeah, these companies are just buying up tomatoes for years to come. Like it was so difficult for us to launch Saws. It took us, Troy and I, like 3 years. We started when we were sophomores in college, and I think like the hardest part about that was getting it over the finish line to, getting into production. And once production near, we people started seeing that we had something there, and now we can essentially get whatever co-packer we want in the nation. Um,
I think whether it was foresight or not, it was like, the one brand that appealed to us was Truff. The two guys had made 30 under 30. We loved what they were doing. We'd seen Rayo's be acquired in 2017 by Sovos. M&A activity was kind of brewing, and eyes were, not yet moving to the category. It was still a sleepy category for some reason. No one was really looking at disrupting it other than Truff. But we felt there was yeah, that was so it's funny. We actually raised our first dollars with a jar of hot honey arrabbiata that was unlabeled, that had just come from a third party R&D that we'd paid. And we didn't have a brand. We didn't know what the brand identity was going to be. We didn't know what the brand voice was going to be. We didn't really know who our consumer was. We just had a really, really good hot honey arrabbiata. At the time, it's now been renamed hot honey marinara. But we had good product, and like we handed it to a handful of investors, and they loved it. Like, they almost felt, which was interesting. I think it was almost a blessing in disguise that like we had this really good product and a blank slate for a brand, because we had young investors who were tasting product and loving it. We had older ultra high net worth investors who were tasting it and loving it. And it felt like our addressable market. It wasn't like, okay, we want to build this Gen Z founded, really fun, exciting, cheeky brand. Um, but product is resonating, from
Yeah.
Gen Z to boomers, which I
Yeah.
think looking back was and it's showing now. I mean, our ideal consumer is like a 30 to 45-year-old female. And I think it's like younger working mothers generally who are looking for a quick, easy meal.
Yeah.
Um, but
But I would say like on the flavor profiles, it was really Troy and I that like decided like what we wanted to go with. I think like we got some R&D and did some research on like what flavor profiles were trending. And then we went back to the drawing board and we're like, okay, hot honey sounds insane. Everyone's putting it on their pizzas, everyone's putting it on, different stuff. Like why don't we put this to, sweeten it? Like other brands like Truff, for example, they use agave in their pasta sauce. Like honey is good for you. Like it's a lot of health forward people also put it in their, on their like granola and stuff like that. Yes, like it's a little more calories in our pasta sauce, but like or for the most part, our sauces are really clean. Um, and yeah, I mean like on terms of flavor profile, it's like really Troy and I looking at the market and seeing like what we think is trending and doing just like more, and we have a few new flavors coming out soon, for some launches. But yeah, we're excited.
And I think we've also learned, like early on, we wanted to be, one, pretty crazy on the flavor profiles, and we learned the hard way that like procurement is not a simple thing. Like we had one SKU that we were going to bring to market that had a kombu powder from Japan. We couldn't get kombu powder domestically, and we couldn't bring the product to market. Like we just couldn't do it. We couldn't risk from a supply chain perspective buying a single really like minor ingredient from Japan. I think also it has helped us, kind of pull back a little bit and understand that like, okay, we need to be just differentiated enough. And again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. So we want to be familiar to consumers. We want to be using flavor profiles that consumers generally understand, have already tried, maybe use in other categories, but haven't yet seen in the pasta sauce category. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and I think you've done a nice job, at least for my own personal taste preferences. And I'll tell you, the moment that it hit for me was when I tried your vodka sauce. And look, I lived in Brooklyn for 5 years and had access to the best Italian food, I'd say, outside of Italy in the country, and I'd argue that against anybody. Um, I have really struggled. I love vodka sauce. I've
Yeah.
struggled to find a any canned vodka sauce that can stack up. Uh,
Yeah.
yours is excellent, and it's honestly not trying to sell too hard here. It's one of the best ones that I've tried. So congrats
We love it.
on the product
Love it.
development.
Thank you.
All right, love the stories on the current status. Love to hear more about what you're working on today and what's on the horizon for the next few months.
Clear white space to just take this two-pronged approach, build a cheeky, fun, exciting, dynamic brand, and kind of pair it with these on-trend, experiential, uh, you know, differentiated, for lack of a better term, flavors. Like take what's been done. Don't reinvent the wheel. It's, we're not launching a prebiotic pasta sauce. We're not launching an adaptogenic pasta sauce. But again, I think we were lucky at the time because we didn't know anything about the industry, and looking back, it was some stroke of like lucky wisdom. But we just took what had been done and added a little bit of like differentiation, being flavor, like leading with flavor, engaging the consumer with really high quality content, and content that is like fundamentally different than what the old Italian restaurant brands can put out there, and retaining and driving repeat with differentiated product that's not so different that it becomes educational, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's
Yeah,
it's
it
it's honestly it's crazy to think like in every category of grocery, like when you go down the cereal aisle, like yeah, there's Frosted Flakes, but there's also like a healthy version of Frosted Flakes. Like the pasta sauce aisle is like marinara and then another marinara with just someone else's brand on it, and it's like how they're just like competing with each other. Like all you're doing in that sector is just like you're you're essentially like you need to build like that community around the brand, I think, like when they're competing with each other. Like if you blind tested Carbone and Rayo's and just like didn't even know which one was which, like you probably most consumers would not know the difference between the two. Like there's really no difference in a lot of the premium marineras on the pasta sauce aisle. They essentially
Yeah.
all taste the same. So it's like how are they competing with each other? Is it just branding? Is it the brand loyalty to the brand name? And like Troy said, like early on, we needed like we didn't want to do an adaptogenic or a prebiotic pasta sauce. Like we realized like we need to sell in states like Tennessee and Michigan and North
Yeah.
Dakota and stuff like that. Like we need to be able to sell in those markets rather than just the coastal or bi-coastal markets.
Right. Yeah. If you want to scale the business, and yeah, it's really interesting. I think I'll say we don't know each other very well. We've met a few times, and I first discovered the product on LinkedIn, and to me, it was really it stood out. It's very much different from one a branding perspective. So feels like you're taking sort of I don't know if this was an inspiration, but Prime. Look at Prime Beverage, and you look at the color blocking that Prime uses in that hydration category and energy, and it certainly has broke through. And there's other reasons for that, but the brand identity to me is key. I believe will keep people coming back is the flavor profiles, and would love to hear a little bit more about that. Did you know you were going to go into flavor right off the bat as your differentiator, or did that come with development and learning about what was out there?
I,
Hmm. Yeah, so we have, and this is actually the first time we'll say it publicly, but we have a Whole Foods launch in SoPac mid-March. So really focused on building that data story, executing, supporting on shelf. It'll be 3 SKUs. Unfortunately, the vodka won't be in Whole Foods SoPac, Kyle. I know you're not out on the West Coast, so it's not going to affect you too much, but we're pushing for them. So it'll be 3 SKUs in Whole Foods, and as you know, that data is so important. So it's really hyper focused on doing everything we can to support, sell through in store. And then, it's interesting. We're in Central Market now. We're moving tons of units in Central Market, so really focused on continuing that success. We went through, almost 5,000 jars in 2 weeks across 10 stores in Central Market. So data there has been great. It's really being meticulous in building these data stories and picking and choosing, which consumers we're touching, where we're looking to launch product, not shotgunning the brand in too many doors, but really, learning as much as we can on shelf because there's so much that we still have to learn, and we know that.
hmm hmm
And then, a couple of bigger, we've got almost 3,000 stores, actually just over 3,000 stores committed for 2024. We've got a chain-wide launch in September, um, and a couple of other pretty large global accounts sprinkled throughout the year. So we got a big year ahead. Like Winston said, we're formulating 2 new flavors. They'll be exclusive with a pretty big chain globally. And we're just really we feel fortunate that from a door count perspective, we've really surpassed expectations. We're kind of now at the point where we have to execute. It's all execution. It's building community, and it's continuing to innovate.
And going back to what Troy said too, I think like not shotgunning the brand has given us like that leg up on, tweaking our recipes. Like the company's not very old, so like we have the ability to go back and tweak some of our recipes to listen to what consumers want. I would say like for our first hot honey batch, like we were able to tweak like honey a little bit. For the summer lemon batch, we were able to go down on the lemon. We're just listening to consumers and like what the people wanted before we can go to mass, which I think has really helped us, where we're at right now with upcoming launches. Because we want product to ultimately be the best that every consumer wants. I know because our products are so unique that like everyone's gonna be opinionated and have their own opinions on like, oh, this has too much of this has too much of that. But like for the most part, we want to take that 80% of feedback and just roll with it, you know?
Yeah, and so by not shotgunning, are you referring to not spreading yourself too thin and going too wide all at
Yeah.
once? Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about? Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
I think it's one of the most common missteps that I've seen in the consumer space. Honestly, I've made that mistake myself when I was running a brand. So it's tough to say yes to everything and put yourself in that spot. I mean, but to that point, how many doors were you guys in at the start of this year?
Yeah.
I
128,
think
I think.
yeah, 100,
One
Uh,
120,
128.
128.
Yeah,
to
and
so Jed,
3,000 is the goal
I
for
know,
the. I
Yeah.
mean, that's aggressive.
I know,
It's a good
I know,
goal when you have
I know,
these high level chains on. But
Hmm.
yeah,
I know.
how are you planning
Fortunately,
to manage through that?
I will say that you know, the majority of those doors are Q4 24. So, you know, and really it was so unexpected. If it wasn't the what we felt is the right account, we'd have said no. But we're actively building out a team internally. We're raising some more money. We're looking to build out kind of that operational flywheel. That at this stage we feel like we have covered, but at thousands of doors we don't yet have. So it's really building, you know, picking and choosing and building a team of people who have done it, who have been there. But also, we're young guys. We like some like young, hungry members of the team too. So it's three of us right now. It's Winston, it's myself, and we have a head of brand, Cameron Fredrickson, who came from Dough, the cookie dough brand. Cameron's a really talented creative. So we feel like the creative side of the business and that pillar is squared away. The pillar that we're building is the operational system. So but fortunately, we've got a few quarters to take care of it. But yeah, I know it can sound contradictory that we say we're not going to shotgun the brand, but we've got the massive door count. But I will say it's concentrated in meaningful accounts that we feel we can effectively control. And the reality again is like the set is also so concentrated. Like we're really directly competing in the premium side of the category with three or four other brands. The remainder is private label and non-premium. We're not launching a beverage into a set with 100 brands. We're not launching a protein bar, and nothing against those categories. They're probably more scalable and they're higher velocity and those sorts of things. But it's a lot harder to break in to the pasta sauce set, and once you're in, fortunately, your cash goes a lot further on ground and in trade by virtue of not having to compete with dozens of other brands. So, we caveat that with feeling a little bit more confident than we otherwise might in a bigger category.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Winston. Yep.
Just to kind of like what Troy was saying, it's like you walk down. I mean, it's like I wish I could just like pop a picture of like Saws on shelf, for example, in like Central Market. I mean, it's like crazy to see our product like pop compared to like competitors in the category. And like Troy said, like I think it'll be interesting to see like how that translates to a national, more conventional account as well. So we're excited for all upcoming retail launches, but there's still definitely like a lot for us to learn.
Yeah.
But with the support of like our network and other founders we talk to, I think we're getting there.
And I
Yeah,
think
it's like
one more note, Kyle, if you don't mind. I think like the reality too is, we really feared how Erewhon data would translate, like the coastal elite consumer to then like central market, which is still natural and still premium. But central market data and town and country data and really these new accounts, touching an entirely different consumer data has been so strong that the upcoming launches are all rooted in data. Like, the central market launch, that data kind of catalyzed, a bigger chain to bring us on. And so I would say, we're not really flying blind. It's, these buyers are very smart people, as you know. And as much, I think, as they love to support young brands, they also are doing what's in the best interest of their business as they should. And so by virtue of that, like there is a lot of data behind the decisions we're making too. So,
Sure. And yeah, I think I'm just playing a little bit of devil's advocate, and I think you're going to hear that comment from others.
no, of
Uh,
course.
Personally, I completely agree with your strategy. I think the time to go is now. When you
Hmm.
look at the dynamics of the category, you've got certain brands being acquired or being held up in the acquisition, and given the state of where things sit, now's the time. So
And I think
it's
the
it's
reality
exciting.
is, just like you're saying, I think like if we didn't do it, I think like there's definitely always going to be someone next. Like we're not
One's,
the only Gen Z pasta sauce like coming up.
Right.
There's going to be others.
yeah,
Sure.
I
someone.
think to take it first to scale with unique flavors for sure. But there's always going to be competitors.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the reality like of the industry too, is that like it's not a highly uh proprietized business. Like as any food brand understands, like it's very difficult to protect yourself in this industry. We're not a consumer tech brand with like a intellectually proprietized model behind the algorithm that's running the business. It's really our moat is trademark, which we own the rights to the business, of course. Distribution and building that loyal, engaged community that will have our back if anyone ever pops up and does what we're doing. So I think that's the other kind of question about how quickly to accelerate. And Winston's right. Like if we don't do it, somebody else will, and it's on us to just do it well, to execute, and we've got one shot, and we're totally willing to do whatever it takes, and we make a point to be really meticulous in being sure that we're setting ourselves up for success.
It's a solid perspective. I agree. The moat
Mm.
isn't one thing. It's a combination of brand, distribution,
Yeah.
product. When you get
Mm.
those right, it fuels the community, and then
Mm.
you're cooking with some gas. So great to hear. We've talked through 2024 plans and ideas. Let's look beyond that. What's the ultimate vision? Where is Saws going to be in a few years, say 5 years?
It's tough to say. I think, one on naming, we feel fortunate that, I think ideally sauce can be synonymous with sauce. You think we're focused on pasta sauce, but from a line extension standpoint, there's a lot of ways we can go. I think ideally, we're building a generational legacy brand. I think like, the reason we started this business was that we felt as Gen Z consumers that we had no loyalty to anyone on shelf. I think Gen Z is increasingly feeling that way with legacy brands, which is why you're seeing so many like exciting young Gen Z founded, and not just Gen Z, but I think the reality is there's a huge opportunity for us to be a household staple as these younger consumers become and have the majority of purchasing power in the U.S. There's no reason why we couldn't be the average American's go-to pasta sauce. Our margin profile allows it. We're not, we don't have to be $15 on shelf. We can really be $7 on shelf and do pretty well. Um, and I think more so than just pasta sauce, we can really build this ecosystem of sauces, of condiments, and even, I think there's a lot we can innovate on outside of just sauce. I think we have a massive opportunity with kind of this pseudo-Italian, California Italian brand identity mixed with one that is the exact opposite of the old Italian way. So we feel like our brand works from this organic perspective in Italian foods, but also in just trendy household staples that need to be spiced up a bit and differentiated.
Hmm. And going off kind of what Troy said, like I think we like Rayo's built a $600 million business on 5, 7 SKUs of just pasta sauce. Like now they're doing frozen, products, pizzas, like whatever. They've got 40 SKUs now. But I think like going deep on what we know and, maybe, expanding our product line within the pasta sauce category, I think is probably what we're gonna do. Um, we don't want to go too deep and expand like 50 SKUs. A lot of brands do that just to drive top line. I think like if we can build brand loyalty to the pasta sauce sector, and in which where we feel we have the most differentiating product like branding and uniqueness, I think it suits in our favor. So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see like how we perform nationwide with all the other upcoming retailers we have, but
Hmm.
yeah, we're excited.
Yeah, and I will say too, like the Winston's right. The focus is when we started the business, everyone was launching any SKU they could. They were driving top line, they were crushing D2C, and they were selling off a multiple of that top line, and everyone was happy. Now, as you know, Kyle, it's totally been flipped on its head. It's like the focus is profitability, and uh, profitability in the pasta sauce category. And when at that inflection point of profitability, then we'll focus on what else we can do, if that makes sense. But I think right now, it's sell profitable pasta sauce and make consumers happy doing it.
Well put. That's the politically correct answer that I think a lot of investors would love to hear. So, but
I said
it's
that
the real
with
honest
yes.
answer. Yeah. So nicely done. But
Yeah,
uh, Troy, Winston, thank you so much for joining. It's going to be really interesting, exciting to watch the journey, and congrats on everything you've done. It's not
right.
easy. So, enjoy the moment and looking forward to following.
We're getting there. Thank you,
Oh,
Kyle.
thank you, Kyle.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Appreciate
for
you
having
having
me.
us on the show too.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.